It's been a long time coming. As someone who went around, and I'm sure many in this House did during the election campaign and before, talking to businesses who had suffered at the hands of crime, I'm sure many of you can empathise and understand what I am about to say. Victims' needs have not been put first. Businesses, people who are going about their honest daily lives have felt like they were getting classed as second fiddle to the criminals. That last government that was unceremoniously turfed out last year had it coming. And one of the things that was coming to them was the increase in crime that we were seeing in New Zealand. Victims' needs need to be first. And I'm proud to stand and speak on behalf of this bill, which will do just that. Mr. Speaker, there are going to be some changes. One will be, and I would like to relay a story of going to a small store owner in the Bay of Plenty who had just suffered their second ram raid. And now I'm no detective, I'm no sleuth, but I asked this victimised shop owner, what did you see beforehand? Did you see anything coming? And this shop owner told me we saw some adults that we thought were pretty sketchy coming in and sussing out our shop in the days ahead of that ram raid. And sure, we thought something was going on. They were bringing kids who probably should have been in school, but weren't, because also truancy was a massive problem in the last government. They were bringing kids along, and then, sure enough, we have a whole lot of kids who probably should have been at school committing a ram raid. Well, Mr. Speaker, we are adding a clause to the Sentencing Act to make sure that an adult offender can be convicted as a party to an offence committed by a child or young person when there is some encouragement there. There's other things around live streaming, and we've seen the abhorrent images, I think, of the Papamore Plaza, which had a rather famous, and I almost don't want to draw attention to it, but ram raiding incident with some delinquents charging through the centre of a shopping centre and causing hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage. And then these Muppets decided they were going to post that image along with the bounty which they'd achieved from a small skate shop, and it would have equalled 1/100th of the value of the damage which they did to that store. Mr. Speaker, we've seen abhorrent scenes on our public transport in this country where people who are going about a job of providing a service to the good people of Auckland wanting to get places have been assaulted on public transport. Well, I'm glad to say we're adding a clause that makes public transport passenger service workers it would create an aggravating effect if you were to take some criminal activity out on those good people. And then, Mr. Speaker, the final thing I would like to speak about is a policy which, I was very proud ACT was championing in the election campaign, and this government, as part of the ACT National Coalition, is now putting this into practice. And this is sole charge workers. People who are often left alone working and can feel extremely vulnerable behind a counter with people coming in and out. This needs to be an aggravating factor when someone is taking a criminal act upon these good people. Also, people who are working from a home, from a business which is connected to a home. Now, I'm going to relay a little story. Over the weekend, I have a small business attached to my home. Now, some little thug came along and kicked out the place where an honesty box once lived. Took this honesty box, which is the business run by my small children, and took off with it. Now, I have to say I was really disappointed, but this clown decided to have some distinctive tattoos showing on a video camera, so I hope that assists police in the Bay of Plenty in piecing together this delinquent's behaviour. But just to reiterate, I didn't feel overly threatened in my home, but I've got small kids, Mr. Speaker, and this is a home where we live, and we have a business near it. I do not think that the things that they were exposed to should be exposed to anybody. And people who think about their parents, young children, when they're thinking about their kids, working sole charge at a business connected to their home, I hope, Mr. Speaker, that this change makes those families feel a little bit safer tonight. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Yeah, I just want to talk about that because I've encountered crime in my own community, right? I've had people try to steal stuff from my household. And you know what came to my mind? I feel really bad for these people. The fact that they have to come to my place and steal my shit. Are they dealing with poverty? That was the first thing that came to my mind. The idea of punishment didn't really occur to me as a first thought. It's disappointing to see that the ACT Party and other members are just they're not interested in looking at the idea of poverty plus proximity equals crime.
He seems really bitter. I don't know, I get that vibe.
Something I'd like to sit around and say is maybe we could do this at Select Committee. Now anyone knows me knows I have a lovely war against wins. I would sit there and say I would should say if someone went in for social security help and got declined, should that case manager be held as an accessory potentially? Should that be looked at as a factor? There are some situations where case managers outright do that and then they end up with that. This is a flow-on effect. Say someone who was rightfully entitled to something, like a food grant, who got declined because, maybe they got told to hand over 12 months worth of bank statements that breached the Privacy Act, and then they've gone in and committed a crime to steal a loaf of bread, or as Fat Tony of The Simpsons would say, cigarettes. Should that person be looked as a potential accessory, as an enabler to cause that crime to potentially occur. As that sort of thing should sit there and be looked at. Because, we talk about accountability. Well, accountability, they talk about having adults sitting down there being held accountable for scoping out the place and telling the kids what to do to be charged. That can drag on actually quite a fair bit. I've got a very quiet panel.
Thinking.
I think I've got a few numbers here about the amount of people that could be introduced into the prison system. And it's around 1,350 people. More people will be put into the prison system with the a new bill being passed. And what they're going to do is completely eliminate for sentence reductions. They're not going to use youth or mental illness or remorse for significant sentence reductions, and it will lead to longer sentences for individuals who may be more vulnerable. And it's just and then 1,350 is a very conservative estimate. It isn't the maximum; it is a very low number. And they say that by reducing the 40%, there was a 40% cap on prisoners, right, under the Labour government. Yeah, by removing that, that'll introduce 1,350 more people into the prison system, and that's not accounting for them removing the youth, mental illness, and remorse factors that were going into sentence reduction.
How many people are potentially going to be put on remand as well? Considering about a third of our prison population is on remand, so they're not even been sentenced yet. They're awaiting their day in court.
Oh yeah, it'll clog up the. There was something about it'll clog up the courts, and reducing a sentence incentives will make more guilty pleas, could mean more guilty pleas, and push defendants to opt for trials, and therefore clog up the courts and delay justice for all parties on all sides of the.
Yeah, especially if you're in a situation of where, no, we've got to throw the book at you. Actually, a great example, not New Zealand related, but Hunter Biden. That was a great example of where there was this big sweetheart deal. The Republicans tanked it though, but effectively now they're throwing the book at him like crazy as a result because of how long it's dragged out through the court system of this whole process. But yeah, he was given a pretty sweetheart deal that wouldn't have ended up in there. But yeah, the Republicans screwed it up. But that's like a classic example of like, well, what happens if, say, you have a deal and suddenly the deal's taken off the table, and so, if that's the case, I'll try it in court.
I mean, at the moment, our justice system is pretty clogged up, and I think that point was raised earlier. I mean, I think it's around about 3 years to get into the High Court for a trial, and it just takes a really long time because there's so many cases are backlogged in the district court. So adding extra processes, adding extra layers of complexity into the system will just mean that people will sit in prison without having been charged for even longer. And I mean, that's ultimately not good when people could actually be outside of prison, contributing to society.
Or actually being rehabilitated. Because if you're on remand, you're not eligible to anything.
Yep. Well, exactly. They could be outside of prison, being in employment, paying taxes, doing, being a member of society, rather than the other alternative, which is sitting in prison and doing not a heck of a lot. So it's a choice that the government is making around actually denying people the opportunity to be relatively productive and members of society in order to prove a point around justice, or just prove a point around locking people up in order to look tough. And I just can't really see the point, to be honest.
There was a beautiful piece by Laura Walters on Newsroom about how Muldoon. I have a lot of problems with Muldoon, but he got it right in terms of with gangs and a lot of people going into prison. He sent them to work rather than necessarily just. I think it was a quote from someone under the Bolger government, might have been Bolger himself, where you just throw away the key and put them in the prison. And I think even to some extent in the 80s under the neoliberal Rogernomics, even Richard Prebble said, look, there needs to be some form of work that makes people who commit crimes reintegrate into society. There was a difference between who should do it, whether it be private or public, but there was an overall consensus at that time that people should be able to be put to work, so therefore they can be part of a community again, rather than you isolating them and overall making them feel even more disconnected from society than they already do.
Exactly, yeah. And on what Dave X's comment is in there, and especially if they were to get sentenced to a prison sentence of 3 years or longer, but if they spent 3 years on remand, they lose their right to vote and could walk out the door. As that used to happen under the old system of, oh, you're held on remand, oh, but you have a right to vote, oh, you've been sentenced to prison as time served, you got struck off the electoral roll, your letter got sent to the prison, your prison letter, say you got struck off the roll, it's sent, returned to sender.